The rich woman barely looked at the black waitress as she dropped the menu on the table. With a smirk, she crossed her arms. "I hope you don't mess up my order," she said. "Service in places like this is usually awful." The waitress stayed calm. She had dealt with people like this before. But what the woman didn't know, she was about to regret every word. Because the owner of this restaurant was someone she'd never expect. Before we continue, let us know, where are you watching from? The restaurant was one of the most exclusive in town. The kind of place where money spoke louder than manners. Tiana had worked there for years. She knew how to handle difficult customers, how to smile through rude comments, and how to stay calm even when she wasn't respected. But tonight, she was being tested. Charlotte sat at the corner table, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she waved Tiana off like she was nothing. She was used to being the center of attention, used to getting what she wanted. To her, people like Tiana were invisible. "Is the food here even worth the price?" Charlotte muttered, not really expecting an answer. "I hope you all know how to cook better than you serve." Tiana didn't react. She had heard worse. But what Charlotte didn't know? She wasn't just insulting a waitress. She was insulting the wrong person in the wrong restaurant. Because in just a few moments, she was going to wish she had stayed silent. Charlotte sighed loudly, tapping her manicured nails against the table. She had barely glanced at the menu before looking up at Tiana with a smirk. "Do you always take this long to bring out drinks? Or is that just how things work around here?" Tiana placed a glass of water on the table, her expression calm. "Your order is being prepared, ma'am. It should be out soon." Charlotte scoffed, swirling the water in her glass. "I should have known service here would be this bad. You'd think a place this expensive would have better trained staff." The customers at the nearby tables glanced over. They could hear every word. Some of them shifted in their seats, uncomfortable with the way Charlotte spoke to Tiana, but Charlotte didn't care. She was used to people letting her say whatever she wanted. Tiana had worked here for years. She'd served all kinds of customers, kind ones, impatient ones, rude ones, people who thanked her and people who ignored her. She had seen all types of wealthy people. But Charlotte had a special kind of arrogance. She didn't just believe she was better than everyone else. She enjoyed making sure people knew it. Charlotte leaned back in her chair, looking Tiana up and down. "You must love working here, huh? Serving people like me all day?" Tiana said nothing. Charlotte let out a dramatic sigh, as if she were bored of even talking to her. "I mean, I guess it's an upgrade for you, right? Better than wherever you came from." The air in the restaurant shifted. A couple at the next table froze, exchanging nervous glances. Even the bartender paused mid-pour, listening in. Tiana's fingers tightened around the tray she was holding. She had heard insults before. She'd been spoken down to before. But this was different. Charlotte smiled at her silence. "Nothing to say," she mused. "Typical." Tiana took a slow, deep breath. She could snap back. She could say something sharp, something that would shut Charlotte up in an instant. But she didn't, because she knew something Charlotte didn't. Instead, she simply smiled. "Let me know if you need anything else," she said, turning away. Charlotte smirked, watching her leave. "That's what I thought." She picked up her phone and started scrolling through social media, completely forgetting about the waitress she had just insulted. But the rest of the restaurant? They hadn't forgotten. A few whispered among themselves, exchanging knowing looks. The tension in the air was thick, because they knew what Charlotte didn't. She thought she had just spoken down to a nobody, but in a few moments, she was going to wish she had stayed quiet, because the owner of this restaurant was about to walk in. And when Charlotte found out who they were, she wouldn't just regret her words, she would be humiliated in front of everyone. Charlotte sat at her table, impatiently checking her watch. Why was her food taking so long? She looked around for the waitress, irritation growing. "This service is ridiculous," she muttered. "I'm going to leave a horrible review." The moment she opened her mouth to call for Tiana again, the front doors of the restaurant swung open. A woman in a stunning black dress walked in. Her presence was impossible to ignore, the kind that commanded attention without saying a word. Heads turned as she stepped forward, her heels clicking against the floor. She wasn't just anyone. Charlotte's eyes lit up in recognition. She knew who this woman was. The woman had been featured in business magazines, invited to exclusive events, and celebrated as one of the most successful black entrepreneurs in the city. Charlotte jumped up, eager to introduce herself. "Oh, my God! It's such an honor to meet you," she said, adjusting her hair and flashing her best smile. But the woman didn't even look at her. Instead, she walked right past Charlotte and went straight to Tiana. The restaurant went completely silent. Charlotte stood there, her hands frozen midair. What was happening? Then she heard the woman speak. "Are you okay?" the woman asked Tiana, her voice filled with warmth and concern. Charlotte blinked rapidly, her confidence crumbling. "Wait, what's going on?" she asked, her voice suddenly quieter. Tiana looked at Charlotte for the first time since their interaction. Then she turned back to the woman and smiled. "I'm fine, sis." "Sister?" Charlotte felt her stomach drop. "No," she whispered under her breath. The woman she had just insulted, the waitress she had spoken down to like she was nothing. She was the sister of the restaurant's owner. And the owner, the woman Charlotte had just desperately tried to impress. Charlotte's face turned pale. She opened her mouth, trying to come up with something to say, anything to fix this. But before she could, the owner finally turned to her. And the expression on her face? It wasn't friendly. The entire restaurant was watching now, waiting to see what would happen next. Charlotte had thought she was in control of the night. She thought she was better than the people serving her. But now she realized she had just humiliated herself in front of the very person she was trying to impress, and it was too late to take anything back. Charlotte stood frozen, her confident smirk completely gone. The woman she had just disrespected wasn't just a random waitress. She was family to the restaurant's owner, the very person Charlotte had wanted to impress. The restaurant owner folded her arms, her sharp gaze fixed on Charlotte. The entire room was watching now, the tension so thick that no one dared to speak. Charlotte forced a laugh, trying to recover. "Oh, wow, I had no idea. What a small world, right?" The owner didn't smile. "A small world," she repeated. Her tone was calm, but there was something cold beneath it. Charlotte swallowed hard. "I mean, I was just joking earlier. You know how it is. Just a little playful banter." Tiana tilted her head slightly. "Is that what you call it?" Charlotte's confidence wavered. The weight of what she had done was finally sinking in. The restaurant owner turned to her sister. "Did she treat you with respect?" Tiana shrugged, but her eyes told the truth. "You heard how she spoke to me." The owner nodded slowly before turning back to Charlotte. "You do realize," she said, "that when you speak to my staff, you're speaking to me?" Charlotte's stomach dropped. The whispers in the restaurant grew louder. A few customers shook their heads, unimpressed by what they had just witnessed. Charlotte felt trapped. She had come into this restaurant expecting to be treated like someone important. Instead, she was humiliated. Charlotte forced a smile. "Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I didn't mean any harm." The owner raised an eyebrow. "That's funny, because when you sat down, You didn't seem too worried about being polite." Charlotte's throat felt dry. The owner cut her off. "Let me ask you something. If you had known who my sister was, would you have treated her differently?" Charlotte froze. The answer was obvious. The truth was humiliating. The owner shook her head. "I don't care how much money you have, or what kind of people you're used to being around. In my restaurant, we treat everyone with respect." Charlotte's face burned. She knew people were watching, judging her. She could feel it. The owner turned to Tiana. "What do you want me to do?" Charlotte snapped her head up. "Wait, what?" Tiana thought for a moment. Charlotte held her breath. Then, finally, Tiana spoke. "She needs to know what it feels like to be treated like she's invisible." The owner nodded. "I agree." Charlotte's pulse spiked. Wait. Let's not be extreme here. This is all just a misunderstanding." The owner didn't respond. Instead, she turned to the hostess and said 2 simple words. "Cancel her reservation." Charlotte's mouth fell open. No. You don't have to do that," she said quickly, her voice rising. "I'm a loyal customer. I always come here." The owner's expression didn't change. "And now you won't." Charlotte looked around, desperate for support, but no one was on her side. She had spent the evening making herself feel superior, looking down on the very people who had been serving her. Now, she was the one being told she wasn't welcome. For the first time, she knew what it felt like to be treated like she didn't belong, and there was nothing she could do about it. Charlotte stood frozen, her mind racing. This wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. She had walked into the restaurant feeling important, expecting special treatment. Now, she was being asked to leave in front of everyone. Her hands trembled as she tried to salvage what was left of her dignity. I don't think this is necessary," she said, forcing a laugh. "Let's just forget about it. I won't say anything else." The owner didn't flinch. "That's the problem," she said. "You think words don't matter. But they do. And so do the people you look down on." Charlotte's confidence cracked. "Look, I was just having a bad day. I didn't mean anything by it." Tiana tilted her head. "Didn't mean anything. So when you said, 'People like me should be grateful to even be here,' that was just casual conversation." Charlotte's stomach tightened. She wished she could take it all back. The owner shook her head. "You had every chance to treat my staff with respect. And now, you're just sorry because you got caught." Charlotte clenched her fists. "I wasn't trying to offend anyone." The owner's voice stayed calm. "But you did. And in my restaurant, that's not okay." A few guests clapped softly. Others just watched, waiting to see how Charlotte would react. She wanted to fight back, argue, defend herself. But deep down, she knew. There was nothing left to say. The owner looked at the hostess. "Escort her out." Charlotte's heart pounded. "You can't do this," she blurted out. "I know people, important people." The owner raised an eyebrow. "And yet, none of them are here to help you now." Charlotte's face burned with humiliation. This was supposed to be her night. Instead, she was walking toward the exit, with the weight of every judging eye on her. For the first time, she understood what it felt like to be powerless. She had treated Tiana like she was less than nothing. And now, she was the one who no one respected. Charlotte stepped outside, the cold air hitting her like a slap. The once lively restaurant now felt far away, but the humiliation still burned. She had walked in expecting to be treated like royalty. Instead, she had been shown the door. She looked around, hoping for some kind of escape, but there was none. People had seen everything. The whispers, the glances, they all knew what had happened. For the first time in her life, she wasn't in control. Inside the restaurant, Tiana sat down across from her sister. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. The owner smiled. "I did. People like her think they can treat others however they want. But tonight, she learned that money doesn't buy respect." Tiana nodded. "Still, I didn't want revenge." Her sister laughed lightly. "That wasn't revenge. That was a lesson. And if she's smart, she'll remember it." Meanwhile, Charlotte sat in her car, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She had spent her entire life believing that wealth made her better than others, that status meant more than kindness. But tonight, she had learned that real power isn't in money. It's in how you treat people. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she liked the person she saw in the mirror. Charlotte sat in her car, staring at her reflection in the rearview mirror. The evening had unraveled faster than she could process. She had walked into that restaurant believing she was better than the staff, treating people like they were beneath her. But now, she had learned the hard way that respect isn't bought, it's earned. No one cared about her designer clothes, her expensive jewelry, or her connections. When the truth came out, she was just another person who had forgotten how to treat people with decency. Inside the restaurant, Tiana took a deep breath. She didn't need revenge. She just needed people like Charlotte to think twice before speaking down to someone again. Because the next time, they might not be given a lesson. They might just be ignored, left wondering why the world stopped respecting them. Now, let's talk about it. Have you ever seen someone instantly regret their actions? Or have you ever witnessed someone get exactly what they deserved? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's hear your stories. And if this made you think, hit like, share, and subscribe. Because these stories, they remind us that how we treat people matters. At the end of the day, respect is the only real currency.